Welcome to Lesson 8, Structuring Partnerships and Joint Venture Agreements. In this lesson, we are going to dive deeper into how to structure your partnerships. Now, I am not an attorney, so I'm not trying to give you legal advice, but I will talk with you about ways that I have experienced being able to advise people on getting more legal advice before they create their partnership or their joint venture or whatever agreement or arrangement they're going to create prior to development. So let's jump in. Any relationship you enter, regardless of whether it is a client, fiduciary relationship with a client, or a client realtor relationship, client real estate agent relationship, or client developer relationship, absolutely requires trust. This trust is central to a good working relationship. If trust is not there, keep moving or keep working on establishing trust before you get into the nitty-gritty of developing, because developing reveals the best and the worst of people throughout the process. So you've got to be able to trust people, especially if your client finds you on your worst day or you find your client on his or her worst day while you're in this process. So make sure you have established trust and you provide your client or yourself with the parameters by which trust will be built or based on in your own situation. So make sure trust is there and make sure you understand how you feel trust so that you can communicate that to your client. I always tell people, train other people how to treat you. Be a person of integrity, but make sure others know how to treat you so they don't mistreat you. And then you're out here feeling, a certain type of way, but simply it's really because you did not train them how to best treat you and how to interact with you. So make sure you've built trust as part of your foundation. Now, what is a joint venture agreement? A joint venture agreement is exactly what it sounds like. It's an agreement between multiple people, likely two or more, who agree to go in a venture, a real estate venture or a business venture or some type of venture together. And they lay out the requirements of the agreement in writing. That's a joint venture agreement. I love JVs, as they're called for short, because they give you options and opportunities to interact with a client or with a particular project. So let's say as part of a joint venture, you as the developer decide that maybe you're not going to charge the client a certain fee to develop their project, and instead you would like to be a joint venture partner. Well, you can talk to your attorney about how best to structure that deal and how to become a joint venture partner in this particular project. That means that you'll have some type of ownership in the project for the long haul instead of a commission or a fee right at the beginning. That's a much different type of generational wealth strategy than just receiving a commission check at the closing of the project. And it makes you think, okay, how many joint ventures can I structure? How many joint ventures can I be a part of so that I can build long-term wealth and long-term ownership and long-term equity? So be careful that you don't just go for the short game, that you're thinking long-term as you're developing and preparing to become a developer. So a joint venture agreement that I have here, this is a real joint venture agreement. It's not an agreement I pulled offline. This is a real agreement that is between one client and another client, and it outlines how they are going to work together. So I've redacted the pieces that are private so that you can see that these things are done and utilized on a daily basis. But this was prepared for my clients and the other party by an attorney. I didn't prepare this. So as a real estate agent, we are not attorneys. We are only licensed real estate agents. And if you're not a real estate agent and you're another, person and you're not an attorney, also know you cannot prepare contracts on your own and really feel that you've done everything or know that you've done everything possible to include all elements of that contract. But as real estate agents, we are absolutely forbidden to do contract preparation unless you are an attorney. So be very careful when you're out here working in these streets that you are not acting as if you are an attorney or an accountant or any other professional to which you have not been granted a license. So when you're working with a joint venture and you're having these discussions with your clients, let them know up front. These are pieces of information, that I'm able to share with you based on experience, but we have to get an attorney involved to create a joint venture agreement between us or between you and the builder or whomever it needs to be with. Also, financial institutions sometimes require joint ventures to be implemented between a builder and a developer or a development client if the client has never done this type of development before. Now, I've seen builders enter into joint venture agreements many times, and they do it knowing that they are the builder, they're taking on or assuming a certain amount of risk, and that risk is captured in the joint venture agreement. So however it is communicated, make sure an attorney is involved. Okay? So joint venture agreement and partnership terms requires a meeting of the minds. It requires everyone to come together and say, hey, what are we agreeing to do? That's why an attorney is necessary. It deals with or outlines the terms of the agreement so that everyone knows what we're agreeing to do. What does each party want? The joint venture agreement lays out what the party A and party B each want and how party A and party B will feel, vindicated or feel supported in the agreement based on what he or she or they decide that they want from that agreement. It'll also outline measurement. How will you know that you got what you asked for? So how will party A know that their terms have been met? How will party B know their terms have been met? And 5, and most importantly, how do you get out of it? I had a business coach tell me one time, don't ever get into something unless you know exactly how you're going to get out. That means you go into a restaurant, know where the exits are. You get into a contract, know what your exit strategy is. You should never go into a contract and not understand how to get out of it. Because when you start to feel uneasy and maybe the trust is gone and, the honeymoon's over, not your marriage, I'm talking about the honeymoon of a contract. And maybe things are not, going the way you thought and you're feeling or seeing signs that you need to get out. You need to have the confidence to know how to get out before you actually exit. Because there's nothing worse than not knowing how to get out, but you want to get out. So understand that first, okay? Always know how you're going to get out of a joint venture agreement. And what did the attorney say? If the attorney doesn't say it, I promise you, I always quote, I'm sorry, I'm not an attorney. Let's call the attorney and find out what he or she has to say. Let's email the attorney and see what they have to say. I don't speak for the attorney because I'm not an attorney. I hadn't passed anyone's bar. So I do not speak for attorneys. I find them and I ask them what they have to say for themselves. And do not rush the process. When you're entering a joint venture agreement, it's kind of like the hire slow, fire fast philosophy. You've got to enter slow, and then when you're ready to exit, you know exactly how to exit fast. But enter slow. Do not rush that process because usually it involves a lot of terms and conditions and negotiations and understandings. So make sure everyone is very clear. A famous author whom I love to quote is Brené Brown. She says, clear is kind. Unclear is unkind. Be very clear in your joint venture agreements. And other business deal options. We've mentioned the joint venture agreement. You can enter a partnership, general partnership, especially when two LLCs come together. That's generally still manifested in a joint venture agreement. And remember, I'm not an attorney, so I will not advise you which one is best or which one is worse. I will tell you that I have been a part of them both, joint venture agreements and partnership agreements with different business entities. And they both work fine for me. But you need to know what works fine for you and what works fine for your client. So for the 80th time, hire an attorney. And that concludes lesson 8 on joint ventures and partnerships and working with other people.